We had a look at layouts and pages. Now what about components? Here again we have .view files. So we have 3 different places where we can see .view files. Now components in the components folder simply are the small reusable building blocks which will not be rendered as pages, but as part of pages. So you can use them in your pages or also in your layout. An example, let me get rid of the logo, would be, let's say, a header.view file. There, in the template, we could have a header HTML element, and here we could now start adding header things. Like, let's say, we add an unordered list with list items, where in the list item we have our next link. And that next link could go to users here. So it goes to /users. And the other link, maybe the first one, goes to just /home. Now we could also add some styling here with CSS. And let's add the scoped attribute to make sure the styles only apply to this component. That's what you typically do for your own components. We can add a class to that header element here. And now in here, we could style the header to have a width of 100%, a height of, let's say, 60 pixels. Maybe we use Flexbox in there to distribute the items evenly. And we use justify content center and align items center to center everything horizontally and vertically in that Flexbox. And now we just need to style our unordered list, nav items here. And I just recognized an error. This should be a separate list item. Each link should have its own list item. And we could have nav items now, which I just added. So let's add the nav items class. Remove the list style, so set it to none to not have bullets. Remove all padding and margin. And also set the display to flex here too. Justify content could be space around to add some space within our different list items. Align items could be center here too for vertical centering. And that's just using Flexbox. I added a link where you can learn more about it at the end of this module. And finally, let's give this a width of, let's say, 80%. Now we have created a very simple and still not super beautiful but working header component. And this is now the cool thing. We can use it in our pages. So we can go to our main page, the index.view file, and there we could add our header component like this. Now to use it, we need to import it. So I'll import header from components header.view and add it to components here, header. Now we should be able to see that when we save that file and we go back to our starting page, just localhost 3000, now we got our header here. Now I need to change that index.view file. The container here also uses Flexbox and that looks a bit ugly. So let's remove the entire style section in that index file. And with that, now we got that header at the top and the users link down there. Now we could make this even clearer by going back and giving the header some background color. So we could add a background color of some light gray, let's say. And with that, it's really clear that we got this header. Again, not super beautiful, but we'll get there. We'll create a far more beautiful app throughout the course, no worries. What does work, however, is we can go to users here and home. The problem is the header disappears once we enter a different route because we only added it to the index.view file. Now we can import it into other files too. And notice the special import path here, ~, which simply refers to the root folder so that you don't have to go with .. and have to navigate around like this. So we can copy that import and go to the users page and also add the import path in the script section there, and also add the component property view understands and register the header as a component here too. And by registering this, by the way, we're using that next-gen JavaScript syntax where this is automatically transformed to header. So we assign the imported header to a header property, which then in turn is used as a selector in our template. So which is used as our custom HTML element, you could say. And here we could now add the header like this, and this should be components. Now this will now really look weird if we reload the page, because since it's part of that nested route, it actually goes below that input which we have in that users page here. But we could add the component here too, we could add the header here instead. The big approach, besides the suboptimal styling, which I created like this to save some time, is of course that we have to import that component everywhere we want to use it. And we have to define it as component everywhere we want to use it. Now there are two solutions to this. One will be covered later when I dive deeper into reusable components. The obvious solution here is that we can't just use components in pages, so let me remove it from there. We can also use it in layouts. So we can go to the default layout, for example, and simply add it here. Add our header component here, and to use it here, let's add an import. Let's go to import here, import header from, and now it's that tilde symbol or an @ sign, both works actually, components header. Now an @ sign and a tilde work because these are aliases understood behind the scenes by Webpack, which builds the project, so this will be replaced with the root folder. Now I added it to the default layout, and in the components property of that view component, I can then again register header. And I can do the same in my users layout here. So let's also add a script section here, enter the same code, and use the header here above users section. And with that, if we go back to the application and reload, we see the header everywhere because it's now part of our root layout. And that is the important thing. In the components folder, you create reusable components, normal view components, which you plan on using in one or multiple pages or layouts or other components. You can also use components in components and then use that component that uses components in a page, for example. So anything that's not a frame, so a layout, or the root content of the page that's loaded has to go into components, because you don't want to end up with fat pages where all the logic is in here. You want to use reusable pages instead. So that is pages versus layouts versus components. What about styling now? Where do you put that? Because right now the page looks ugly. So how can we improve this?